We thank you so much for joining us this week for Joccupation, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
We're here with high school friend, Vanderbilt alum, Jim May. Jim, how are you? What are you up to? What are you doing?
I'm doing well. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a federal prosecutor, also known as an assistant United States attorney. I work for the Department of Justice, and day in and day out, I try to catch bad guys, generally white-collar criminals who have stolen money.
So how did we arrive there from Lilburn, Georgia?
Well, unlike that very disappointing class of 1996, the class of 1998 did bring home the state championship. And by winning the state championship, I then parlayed it and followed my friend in his footsteps to Vanderbilt University. At Vanderbilt University, I was a 4-year starter at left guard, which is by far the most unheralded position in sports. Nobody grows up saying I want to be a left guard, and for good reason. My last year, I actually graduated on time and was pursuing a master's degree, even though I thought I was going to play in the NFL. When those dreams came crashing down, I was able to use my education to finish my master's degree. I went to law school at South Carolina. I was a public defender for 5 years, and I've been a federal prosecutor for the last 8.5.
I had to give some advice to a college player that can see this is probably the end. What advice would you give to those people that are standing at that crossroads?
So I think that the hard thing that I see on a day in and day out basis is that, a lot of people do not enjoy their job, right? A lot of people do not, actually enjoy going to work every day. Luckily enough, I love my job. I mean, I thoroughly find it interesting. I find it rewarding. At some point, I will leave the government to go try to make money because, again, if my kids follow after my wife and her athletic ability, then I'm going to have to pay for Vanderbilt. But, trying to figure out what is something that you could enjoy doing. And it doesn't have to be, however you enjoy it is great. Like if it is being a high school football coach, great. If it is, trying to learn how to be a world-class chef, go into culinary school. Right. If it is, trying to, some people enjoy starting businesses. They have that entrepreneurial bug, which is something that I truly cannot and do not understand. So I guess the thing is actually take some time to go talk to people that you respect and know who enjoy their business and figure out, how they got there and figure out, is that something that, you'd want to do? And then, start figuring out and planning how you can get to that, that type of occupation.
We're at that point of the show where we have our jocks. Jocks are our correspondents that are going to give us practical advice as to how we can use this information in our daily lives. First, we have Ashley Burney. She's our community expert. She's a native to Las Vegas, Nevada, a UNLV graduate, and she's also the CEO of Heart to Heart, a women's empowerment organization. We also have Brooke Malone. Brooke Malone has spent over 10 years in the nonprofit industry, in business development and relationship building. She's our expert in personal relationships. She's going to give us practical advice as to how you can first assess the relationships in your life and learn how to build new relationships with others that are either doing what you want to do or things you may be interested in when your career ends. We also have Harold Lursis. He owns his own gym, and he is our diet and fitness expert. He's going to give us tangible advice as to what we can do starting today to get our lives on the right track. So sit back, relax, and let's get some advice. We are joined by our jocks. We have Ashley Burney with us. Thank you so much for being here. Ashley's going to give us practical knowledge, practical steps and advice as to things we can do to positively affect our community. Ashley, thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure. I'm so excited, and thank you for having me. It's truly amazing when we can understand our value and when we're stepping outside of what would normally be our comfort zone and giving back to our community. And many often kind of tackle with, what is community and how can I be of value? And so understanding community is truly understanding that it's evolving. We are a piece to a bigger puzzle. And so when we step out to become comfortable in networking and understanding the importance of relationships and understanding the importance of our value in giving back to our community, it is truly rewarding, really rewarding.
So when athletes are finished, when they're done playing, there's always there's a part of them that dies with that. And I know for myself, when I was going through that, I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to be seen because I was having a hard time seeing myself, right? So what can we learn? What can athletes learn through engaging their community?
Absolutely. And what the nugget here is, for so long, you were in your bubble. It was go time. You were familiar with your day to day. And so stepping outside of that is understanding that so many people already look up to you, and they choose to take a piece of whatever they see and whatever they value and how you inspire. And so continuing that and then stepping outside of your comfort zone, you'll be fortunate to see that when you put that in action, because you feel like, I'm done. There's nothing else that I can contribute. But that's incorrect. Once you're actually able to connect with a seed and sowing a seed in your community, once it's watered and watered with gift, because you have a gift and it's understanding that your gift matters, then it will supersede and it'll take off.
Well, what's a question somebody can ask themselves to figure out what is that gift? Because we know sports is what you do.
Right.
And there is a difference between what you do and who you are.
Correct.
So what's some practical advice or a question somebody could ask themselves to start to discover their own value and what their gift is?
Absolutely. So in stepping outside or asking yourself that question is, from what I've seen, is what do you want to be aligned with? And so in your community, there's so many moving pieces, there's so many organizations, there's so many causes, but asking yourself, what value, right, would I get out of connecting with a foundation that helps children with cancer, for example? Right. Is that you were fortunate to live in prime time, doing what you loved, understanding that, you had it down, but connecting with, say, a cause, right, that is bigger than you. And you understand that you were blessed to live a journey that you thought it only may have impacted you, but it impacted so many more others. And so I think is understanding that you have to know what you want to now align yourself with, because it will be then fed with passion.
Because that leads me to my next question of how could a washed up retired athlete be an inspiration to anybody?
And I really believe this is where you ask yourself in what you were aligning yourself in or with, the value of that. For example, teaching. Being able to give back to, say, youth who are questioning their path, their journey, and you've lived it. So when you can connect with a soul who needs to hear what it's like for those next steps that they haven't even tapped into yet, that's your why. You have to understand your why. And that, again, is in alignment with that puzzle piece. To understand that you are a piece of a puzzle that will be influential in those arenas.
So what I'm hearing is when an athlete engages with their community, their team's just getting bigger.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they'll have to change their position that they play.
Yes.
And I think something that's very difficult, and I can say for myself, because I taught for 8 years in public school, it's so incredibly rewarding when you have the kids that'll come in, skip class, they don't care until you explain to them why they're in school. And that same kid who doesn't care has the best grades because they're inspired. And I think that's where athletes, if they can engage with their community, they can find that new inspiration. They have to now let others tell them what they see. And sometimes others' vision of you is going to help you change maybe what you see on the inside.
And I totally agree with that. And it's so inspiring when I see those who feel like they don't they can't contribute or they have nothing to contribute, yet you're changing a child's life. You're literally changing a child's life by letting them know this is why it is so important for you to take this seriously right now, because you're laying the pavement down for your journey and you have no idea. But when I can come along and I can actually share, you know what, no, you need some constructive criticism. You need to be able to hear, one's opinion on how that one split decision can impact your entire life.
So what's a practical step somebody can take right now to engage their community?
So I think a step that they could take would be looking and looking into those foundations. For example, when you're speaking of nonprofit, looking and researching those foundations who are truly impactful within their communities. So you have a hub of them. Typically there's a hub and they're doing so much. But what you also need to remind yourself in that research is, are there organizations who are trying to be everything to everyone? Because this comes with mission. You will get lost trying to appease everyone. But are there foundations who are sowing the seed of hope in furthering their mission, and that light bulb goes off to you to say, I can be a part of that?
Perfect. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being with us this episode. We look forward to seeing episodes to come.
Absolutely.
Transitioning is an inevitable part of playing sports. It can be a very scary time in life for all of us. Who are some of the people that you would recommend reaching out to when you're in or when you're going through your transition?
Transitioning and you're thinking about those you should reach out to, I would say first start with those who you know can provide you with some solace, like those who you know provide you with some sense of peace to move forward and some type of encouragement. And also, even if you're reaching out to people who you don't know, reach out to those who are doing what you want to do. Reach out to those who are moving in spaces that you want to move in, because those are going to be the people that drive you ultimately toward your goal. They're going to push you to where you need to be. So you want to align yourself and make sure you're having meaningful relationships with people who are doing what aligns with your purpose and with your goals. That's the ultimate way to get to where you're trying to go.
Why is it important to make new relationships? Why is it important to make new friendships during this time of transition and in your life after your playing career ends?
Making new relationships and new friends is going to be vital to your success and your growth. You're not always going to be where you are. You're going to eventually transition to where you're not in the same space. And you're hopefully going to want to grow. Hopefully you're going to want to be in new spaces and doing new things. So that requires you meeting new people who are in those spaces. So when you're going out, and again, this all goes back to, being intentional and knowing what your purpose is and what you want to do. Because you're going to want to, y'all are going to hear me say this a lot, you want to align yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, who are in places where you want to be and doing things, making moves that you want to. So when you're looking to get involved in possibly, technology or investments or some other space that's going to help you grow mentally, financially, physically. I mean, even if you want to be in a different physical space, even though you're an athlete, you're going to want to find people who are in those spaces, and that's going to most likely require new friendships and new relationships. And it's also likely that you have to remember, not only are you going to be receiving information and nuggets from them, you're going to also be able to give. So remember that when you are seeking new friendships, how do I make this a reciprocal relationship? How can I make sure I'm giving just as much as I'm taking? Something one of my really good friends and I always talk about is making deposits and withdrawals on our friendship. So, making sure you're keeping a balanced relationship, make sure you're feeding into that person and, you're getting what you need out of them as well.
in a gap. I'm at one of these events, right, with all the to-dos and people you want to be around. They're in the room. As an athlete, now one, I've already done my research, so I know who's there. But I get so lost in my head. I don't want to sound stupid. I don't want to sound like I'm dumb. I don't want to seem weak. What's a practical step you can have an athlete, just like practice, walk through in their head before they open their mouth?
Be inquisitive. I think asking questions is a great way to get to know people. When you have a genuine sense of curiosity and you want to build an authentic relationship, it'll come through. If you spot someone who you recognize or you know they're with a company that you want to align yourself with, walk over to them, introduce yourself, let them know why you're interested in what they're doing, and let them know possibly what value you can add, or ask them, what issues are you trying to solve? What are some of the most interesting projects you're working on right now? The best way to connect with people and to have them remember you is to take genuine interest in what they're saying and to just go with them with an attitude of inquisitiveness and curiosity. But be serious about it. Like, really try to understand, what they're trying to accomplish, what their goals are, and how that aligns with you and what you want to do. It's a great way to connect with others, and they will remember you. Because most of the time, when others are trying to connect with someone, it's the superficial, hey, how are you? The weather. But when you say, hey, Ainsley, I know you're from Joccupation. These are some of the things I know about Joccupation. Please tell me more about what you're trying to do, how you're trying to expand your networks. How can I help you with that? If someone walked up to you, you'd be blown away, like, wow, they know a little something. And even if they don't know a little something, they're truly interested in learning more about Joccupation. So it's the same thing when you're in a room with someone and someone nudges you like, hey, they're from ABC company, or they're from, this organization. Take genuine interest in what they're doing. And we all have smartphones, even if you have to do a quick little Google search, to find out the latest and greatest news. Do that. If not, just ask them. Just ask them and be genuinely curious, be authentic in what you're asking them, what you're trying to accomplish.
Definitely.
So let me ask you this. So as people are transitioning, I know when we were playing sports, we would burn, 10,000 calories a day. We could eat anything that we want to. And those become habits. But once our working out and physical fitness and physical regimen start to wane, a lot of times we keep consuming foods at the same capacity. And a lot of times, and I know for myself, you just start to gain weight.
Right.
You're not keeping your ratio up. So when people are transitioning, right, when they're going from a very active lifestyle to more sedentary, to more of what they call like the real world or corporate life, what are some tips? What are some things people can do to make sure that they're consuming the right amount of calories?
Now, when it comes to calories, that's, as you said earlier before, I always tell, when you're trying to transition from the athletic life to business life, the difference is when you was an athlete, you was working out 2 to 3, 4 hours a day. That's the reason you was allowed to eat as much as you want, eat anything you want, because you're going to burn it off regardless. But now you're in the lifestyle where you have to manage your time, and you're really allowed to give yourself 1 hour of working out. So now you have to definitely minimize your calories, but not only really minimize your calories, it's really more about minimizing what you eat versus how many calories you put. Because you can still eat as much as you did in college when you're an athlete, but it's about the different types of food that you eat. So now it's more about increasing your vegetables, your fruits, increasing your proteins, and being less on your carbohydrates, because you need the carbohydrates for the energy. But now you're not going to need it as much, only because you're not working out as long as the period, because you give yourself about an hour to really train, and that's all you need to stay in shape, but make sure you go hard within that hour. But after that, then you have to make sure to keep burning fat, because that's essentially, I feel like that's the biggest thing everybody needs, is keep burning fat. You need to increase your protein, increase your vegetables, increase your fruits, like I said earlier. But the best way to do that, if you feel like you can't do it, is to write it down and keep track. Have a food log, just like you have a log of your business meetings that you always have throughout the day, have a food log to be like, I'm gonna eat at this time, eat at this certain time, and eat at that time. And that's the best way for you to keep track of it. I know in college we didn't do that because we didn't have to.
Right.
They would tell us when to eat, what to eat, and so it's like everything was taken care of. But now it's changed, it's flipped. Now you have to do it for yourself.
Right.
So in order to become the best version of yourself, you have to write it down to take care of yourself.
For the person that's on the go with an unpredictable schedule, what are some snacks? So when I go to the grocery store and I'm buying groceries for the week, what are some snacks I can throw into my grocery cart and say, hey, when things get a little bit iffy or wonky, and I know I'm hungry, don't grab the M&Ms. I should grab.
You should grab. I would tell a great snack is the mixed dried fruits and nuts, because I mean mixed nuts are, I feel like they had the protein in it, and they also give you good energy. So it's like even with the quick sugar, some people they need that sugar. If you have the dried fruit, so when you have one of those packets, I feel like it's the best thing you can get, or a fruit that you could put in a Ziploc bag, or a vegetable, something like that, to where you know that you're grabbing something healthy and you can eat it regardless, instead of going for the fries or going for the quick McDonald's burger. It's like, you have something with you that you packed in your suitcase, not suitcase, your briefcase, or in your purse, regardless, that you just grab it, get it, or even such those the protein bars, any kind of protein bar, snack bar, something that one thing I like to always tell my clients, I need you to pick something that you like, because 9 in 10 times, if I give you something to pick, you're not gonna like it, and then you're not gonna do it. So it's more, I'm trying to make sure it goes towards you, if it's your lifestyle. So if you like, for example, some type of protein bar, any brand that doesn't have that much sugar in it, you find one that you like, so that you can pack that in your bag. You get it. That's my snack. I eat on that, and then the rest of my day can go.
We have Courtney Grimes with us. We've heard a lot of great advice from our jocks as to things we can do during transition, from our diet, from our relationships, and even how, as we're going through our transition, how we can positively affect our community. Well, this is the part of the show where I have a great friend of mine, Courtney Grimes. She's a clinical psychologist, and what we want to do right now is really just talk about what's going on in our heads. What is really going on behind the scenes when we're transitioning? So, Courtney, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am based in Nashville, Tennessee. I have been working with professional athletes for almost 10 years now in a clinical capacity. So I've seen folks transition from the high school level to college, from playing college ball to pro, and then the transition, which can be extremely hard, from transferring from pro to sort of what I call civilian life, which can be very difficult.
So what goes on in our heads when we're changing from one environment to the next?
Absolutely. First, to answer that question, we are always transitioning from one environment to the next. If you think about it, from the day that we're born until the day we die, it's one giant transition. You never really arrive, you never really get there. And so for athletes, it's always one after the other, one transition after the other. And I think probably the scariest transition for athletes is when they leave the field, when they leave the rink, when they leave the court, and they start to have a day-to-day existence void of their specialty, void of the one thing that they felt really made them unique. What I think a lot of our athletes forget is that they've already been through a series of transitions their whole lives, and they made it just fine, right? So they transitioned beautifully from high school to college. They transitioned beautifully from college to pro. But all of a sudden, the rules seem to change. And what's happening in our mind whenever we have a giant transition, or what feels like a big transition, is fear. It's fear of the unknown. We as human animals are wired to be afraid of what we don't know and what we don't understand. And so as I see these athletes who leave the field and they move into civilian life, they've never really had that type of day-to-day life. It can be terrifying and very disorienting.
So when people are transitioning, when they have that change, it's actually somewhat ironic because it seems like the higher you get in success, the further it is to the ground.
That's right.
So I know for myself transitioning, one of the biggest problems, issues, was separating what I did from who I am. Because sports was consistent, high school, college, the pros. Sports, you knew you could set your calendar by it. You had consistency. You had a sense of normalcy. Not necessarily enjoyment, but purpose. When it's gone, what are some coping mechanisms? What are some coping mechanisms? What are some things as the person going through it? Some of the things that people resort to, and then especially for kids and wives that see their spouses or husbands, right, that see their spouses going through, and they can tell something's not right, but they can't put their finger on it.
First thing I would recommend is empathy, kindness. These folks who are transitioning from a career of athleticism to more of a civilian career, we have no idea what that's like. And I don't want to try to assume that I know what that's like. What I would recommend is ask a lot of questions. What's happening? What do you feel? What are you worried about? What are you scared of? How can I help? My feeling of coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms are meant to deal with trauma, short-term or long-term trauma. Now, the idea that I'm using a coping mechanism, it needs to be kind of short-term. Because if I'm using coping mechanisms to move through my new normal, that means I have a life I have to cope with. So I have seen folks turn to drinking, turn to drugs, turn to sex or shopping or whatever it is to help them leave the present moment. The present moment seems so painful and so unbearable that they are willing to resort to anything to get them out of their body. This hurts. It hurts too much. I'm too scared. I don't know who I am anymore. I used to be a brand. I was a product. My value as a human is tied to a performance. And then when that gets severed, they feel a little disoriented. They feel disoriented. They feel untethered, I think is the right word, right? And so we are looking to feel safe. We're looking to feel secure. And so we'll see a lot of these folks sort of latch on to other things to sort of help ease the pain. And my ultimate goal and hope would be that everyone realizes that this is totally normal. It's almost unavoidable, right? So the transition out of a career in sports, the pain that's going to inevitably come with that is not only unavoidable, but that doesn't really interest me. What interests me is what you choose to do with that pain. Do you bathe in it? Do you wallow in it? Do you sort of spiral downward? Or do you use that to shine outward and help benefit other people? So I think that a lot of the things that partners can do, children, friends, someone that you know, someone that you love, if you're watching them sort of go through this transition, they might even take on a different kind of personality. They might have traits that show up that they have never had before, or they might start engaging in kind of some self-destructive behaviors, right, that they're using to cope with this transition because it's so hard. It's really, really hard. Of course it is. Ask them, are you okay?
I think one issue when I listen is the perception of athletes that go from high school to college to professional life. Part of what society sees are pampered children. They see people who have the doors open for them. You don't really have to pass. You just got to show up to class. You always get in the line. You're skipping the lines. So I think part of what's hard to hear is having such grace with somebody that you perceive to be spoiled. So how can somebody work through? It's kind of like, how does somebody work through that in regards to getting over yourself and the way you see the other person? Because the transition is part of coming down from who you thought you were.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, a very wise man I know told me that if you can conquer yourself, you can conquer the world. And I think by turning inward and really being able to face some of your own demons, I think that you are able to give back. I think you're able to live beyond yourself. And I would advise everyone who looks at athletes with the assumption that they are all spoiled children, please remember not to make assumptions about anybody. And at the end of the day, we are all human animals and we're all the same. We all have the same drive. We have the same needs. We all need to be loved and be loved in return. And no matter how we get to our end game, we all get to that end game. And try not to make assumptions and try to look for more similarities between you and some of these folks than differences, because there's way more alike than there is different.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. What is the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
Sure, I get asked that question a lot. Psychiatry is medicine. So psychiatrists are actual MDs. They go to medical school with a psychiatric specialty. So if you see a psychiatrist, you are going for medication implementation or medication management. Now what I do is the psychology piece. I am trained to clinically sort of pinpoint outdated apps in your mind and sort of rewire the outdated apps and reformat them in an updated app that works better for you to change your mind, to change your reactions, to change your behavior, and to change your life.
So what I'm hearing is, in the same way athletes, we can develop our bodies through nutrition, through working out. With technology, we can do the same thing with our mind.
Yes, sir. All day.
So this is not new information. These are not new discoveries.
No, this is age-old information. In our country, in America, sadly, a lot of this is not public information, right? So it seems very novel to us because this isn't part of our normal conversation. This is not at the forefront of what we're talking about as a country. But the limit to the human mind is completely unknown. It is unknown. This organ controls your entire reality. So the more self-care you can implement, the better the fruits of that labor will be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining us this week for Joccupation. Courtney, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being a part of the show. And now, your weekly motivational speech.
Hi, my name is Dave Nichols and I am the pilot for the Israeli national bobsled team. I'm here to talk with you this week about dream, adapt, and overcome. Sometimes in life you get dealt a funny set of cards that you're not expecting, but it's what you do with those cards and how you recreate yourself, because you can recreate yourself. You've done it before, you can do it again. You just have to reorganize just a little bit, but keep in mind that there's going to be those dark times. There's going to be that little voice that's talking to you. It's called self-doubt. We don't need self-doubt. We visually close the door on self-doubt and we remember all the positives and all the success that we've had before. We reprogram, we change, we adapt, we dream, we adapt, and we overcome. And basically you can accomplish anything, whether you're on the court, whether you're in the batter's box, whether you're on the football field getting a kick or punt, whatever. You've done that before, you can do it again, just in a little different situation, a little different setting. So have that confidence in yourself. You can do it. You've done it before. When you're going down the track 100 miles an hour and you've crashed and burned 4 times in a row, you feel it. You begin to have that self-doubt. But you know what? You reprogram, you change, you breathe, you get that confidence back, you create that. You embrace the change, you embrace the struggle. You've been through it. Give yourself a pat on the back. You've done your homework. There's no reason why you can't succeed. You've done it before. Now you're confident, you've reprogrammed yourself, you've changed, you've dreamt, you've adapted, you've overcome, and here we go. You're calm, you're ready to go. Let's do this.
Thank you so much for joining us this week for Joccupation. I hope you enjoyed the motivational speech from Dave Nichols that will continue to dream, adapt, and overcome. Please join us next week when we'll be discussing